Okay, ready?
Yeah.
10.
Hello and welcome to one of our sessions on Young Talks, the second one this year. And here we have the pleasure to present very young designers and prompt designers presenting their work on Dalle, Midjourney and Dreamstudio and fusion models. Before we like to announce our next presentations would be a tutorial in Arabic on Midjourney on the October 15th today at 2 p.m. EST. And then we have tomorrow a following session of the AI Spring of the Doctoral Consortium at 10 a.m. and which is going to be the AI Spring, AI and the Design Studio. And then on the October 28th, we're going to have a talk, a Spanish talk about the relevance of emerging technologies in Latam. And then on October 29th, digital urbanism in Portuguese. So if you want to join us and have any questions, please reach us at Digital Futures International and also join us on the Discord channel. And then today we're going to have a presentation of 12 designers on the Dalle, Midjourney and Dreamstudio and other diffusion models. And our sessions is mostly focusing the question of the presentations addressing the question, what is the future of architecture when it's designed by AI? So our session today would not only present some of the work of early career AI prompt engineers from the fields of art, architecture, and design, but also wishes to provoke a debate on how the trajectory of scientific advancements in the area may influence the future of each field. We start mediating the session is going to be me. I'm Professor Angelica Ponzio from Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul in Brazil. And I'll be joined by our co-founder of Digital Futures, Professor Leach from FUTONG and EGS, and researcher Dr. Gustavo Afonso Rincón from the Allosphere Research Group at the University of California, Santa Barbara. And for this presentation, we have divided the presenters in 4 groups according to what they previously sent us, the image that they sent us. The first group is going to be dealing with architecture. We're going to start with Team Fu, and then Sara, Faron, Christo, Hoven, and Nasser, Fakhouri. And then we have 2 presenters on the eco and landscape design, Essa and Dalle. And then regarding design process, Pedro, Venegas, Rodríguez, Luísa, Kagami, Fadhil, and then last but not least, in arts and fashion, Fernanda, Olivares, Kate B, and Luísa, Pires. And after that, we're going to start a debate. So you can ask questions on YouTube if you wish, but we are going to address like these 4 main questions and other questions that you have, but about how does the trajectory of scientific advancements in the area may influence the future of each field, how this technology can change the way we work, and what will be the future of art, architecture, and design in the age of AI, and how will it affect our outlook at designers? Is it our livelihood at risk? Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to ask our first presenter, Team Fu, to share.
Yes,
Team Fu is part of, hi, just let me introduce you a little bit. He's part of Zaha Hadid Architects in London, and he's a designer and researcher of ZH Code, where he specializes in algorithm design and related computational research. Team Fu, the floor is yours, please.
Great, thank you very much. You guys see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, great. It's a pleasure to be invited to such an interesting talk over a very interesting topic that I'm specifically really into at the moment, especially. So yeah, as discussed, I'm from Zaha Hadid Architects, especially in the ZH Code cluster, where I specialize in parametric design and algorithmic design. And at the moment, also starting to dabble into artificial intelligence for design, both in the professional career as well as on my own on the side. I graduated from the Architectural Association, and I also do digital workshops on the side with Harvard as well as Parametric Architecture Academy. So to start off, I've been dabbling a lot into this recent text prompt technology. And from my side, I try to really orient it towards constructible and buildable architecture, and architecture that are more, I guess, I pertain to the realism of it a bit more. So I try to make sure that I generate clear concept and clear form so that we can use it as a way to explore a bit more formalism side of architecture as well as construction in a way that can be perhaps more readily adapted later down the line of fabrication and construction. So to talk a bit about my methodology, I've been basically creating different methods to find ways to control this technology towards what I really want to achieve as an output, because it is quite chaotic most of the time. So I've been developing different versions and different methods to deal with that. So for example, I like to mix and match Midjourney as well as Dalle 2. I find Midjourney to produce the best visual composition and output overall, but there are always things that can be fixed. And Dalle 2 right now, at the moment, you're able to get local details to be fixed so that you can basically fix little problems that are there. And then finally, I post-process with software such as Photoshop, where I basically try to finesse it at the end. So to really bring it towards what I envisioned at the beginning. And other forms of development is through the iterative process of choosing the final composition and image, as well as architectural design that you're looking for through a process of iterating and just evolving the form until you really find it to be towards what you want. And a lot of the times there are good forms from, for example, on the left side, you have image 1 that's good for the left building, and image right is good for the right building. And I find different elements and I combine them in Photoshop a lot of the times, because you always tend to get something nice from one thing and then something else from the other. So I find it helpful to really finesse it in the end a bit more with Photoshop. There are so many versions right now of AI, as well as versions and updates on their own as well. So for example, here, I created one architecture with Midjourney version 3. I tested out with the Dalle 2 generate variation technology to reimagine it basically. And it gives a more, I would say, formally detailed and realistic architecture, but at the same time, at some point less artistic. And then you have Midjourney 4 as well, which also does more formally accurate representations of a concept compared to Midjourney 3. So it's interesting to bounce back and forth and test each one of them. And another point I like to emphasize is the idea of control, how much we can really get like through specificity, what we really want to achieve. So for example, here is a series I made using recognizable architecture, and to try to show that in a way, it's not always chaotic, random outputs. At times I have a very conceptualized idea that I want specifically it to achieve. So through iterative process of getting it to this final form, I'm able to really get exactly what I was looking for in the end. And it's really interesting to really try to merge different concepts together. For example, here in my tectonics of the Chinese calligraphy, I'm really into Chinese calligraphy as well. So I like to merge the ideas of that and combine it with architecture. And this idea of combining these different, different visual concepts together is, there's so many possibilities and different ways to explore. So in my line of work, I specialize in parametric design. So here with AI, I really try to create projects that can be realized by parametric architecture. So a lot of ways I try to push it towards something that is feasible to be designed through parametric design. So here an example is one where, yes, the AI creates the initial concept, and I try to bring it towards architectural feasibility. And using parametric design, I find ways to find the patterns and to rationalize it, its form in 3D, and try to really generate and recreate this organic natural shapes using algorithms, using mathematics and graphs in ways that can be very fast to sketch out and conceptualize something that is just an image initially. And throughout this process, I've been always trying to find ways to create the most realistic AI architecture that can be interpreted into parametric design. And this process is right now a bit analog in the sense where I have a concept and I have to manually interpret it and rationalize it on my side. And right now, I'm also trying to experiment and do research, both for work and on my own, to try to really bridge this process together and bridge the gap. So a lot of the times it's the manipulation of algorithms to generate the organic shapes and forms in a very fast manner. And so to conclude all of this, right now the workflow is a bit clunky, I would say. I'm trying to really hard use AI from image point of view as a concept and then generate it manually through modeling. But alternatively, we're also exploring, for example, stable diffusion, where potentially at some point the text can generate AI three-dimensional outputs directly. So that hopefully, as that technology progresses and we're looking more into it, that it pushes towards that direction. But it is such a crazy new technology right now, and we can already achieve so much with the 2D visuals. So I've been just experimenting quite a lot on my own. Yeah, and so that concludes my side. If any of you want to follow my artwork as well, I have my own channel on Instagram, t.fu. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you. Very interesting presentation. I like your process. You're very up to date with everything I can see. So yeah, I've been following this also. I just saw the lesson that you showed on LinkedIn, I think. Well, anyway, I can talk later about it. Our next presenter is Sara. Are you ready, Sara, with your sound? Is okay now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, is my voice clear?
Yeah, it's clear. Thanks. Sara is also part of DigitalFUTURES, our great member also. But she's here because she's also a very talented architect and researcher with more than 2 years of experience in working on different disciplines related to international academic researches, competition, exhibition, workshops, and so forth. And she worked with Parametric Foundation and considering water effects in Syria in collaboration with universities in Germany and Vienna. And recently she joined Elisava School of Design and Engineering in Barcelona, Summer School, Creativity and AI. Welcome, Sara, please. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity, DigitalFUTURES. As Angelica said, recently I joined Elisava School for Design and Engineering in Barcelona. And I attended the summer school titled Creativity and Artificial Intelligence, and it was the first edition of this course. So my final project was the notion of my ongoing research on AI. So my presentation today is titled AI Exhibition Podium. I will be exploring 2D and 3D possibilities using AI. As we are hearing recently, starting to analyze them and a design of architects and artists more than an autonomous art creation. I'll just stop my video so you can hear me clearly. The research is investigating how artificial intelligence and machine learning can help designers understand space-informed connections, occupation and space areas in a simple and super fast way, rather than computer-aided design, the CAD. The aims of this research is to explore the use of AI as a design tool to design an exhibition podium, and also use machine learning platforms which have pre-trained models to produce multiple alternatives to design exhibition spaces. I will be showing 2D and 3D framework, and I will make a quick comparisons between human work and machine work. So the idea of the exhibition came from a collaborative work between me and my colleagues. We have been working to make an exhibition that hosts 4 concepts using AI to generate images that people can interact directly with. So we have 4 main concepts: AI for senses interaction, after-death experience, human evolution experience, and AI for emotion interaction. So my 2D framework started with a hand sketch, a very basic hand sketch where I determined the area and the dimensions that I have for my exhibition. And then I was searching for a basic AI platform to see a quick view of my 2D podium using coding instead of CAD. So I used processing platform as an initial stage. This is the human design, a very basic modeling of how the exhibition basically will look like, in the partners, the circulation. And then here we can see the machine design. I used Dalle 2, and I put basically the dimensions and the areas and how many sections do I have in this exhibition, and what is the central point of attraction, and the results were yet interesting for me. Here I used Stable Diffusion Dreamstudio to try another concept, which is the maze concept. And I've tried it in 3D, 2D form to see how much the height of the partitions is going to affect my design and so on. In Midjourney, the results were really interesting because this is my first time to see such a schematic design that you get to see the 2D and 3D schematic view of your project in a very new way, in a new dimension. For the 3D framework, I also make a very basic render to see how the exhibition will look like. And then the machine visualization were much more quicker, and the results were really close to what I want and even better. So Dalle gave me a suggestion to have multiple layers for the exhibition, how lighting will look, how we can add transparent partitions to show more of the concept. Also, here in Stable Diffusion, I have used a new idea to separate the podium in 3 podiums and see how people are circulating, and is it really showing the idea or showing screens correctly. The results here were not very convincing to me because it was kind of a lot of maze concept, not the exhibition concept that we wanted. So I have also prompted a concept that I want, an exhibition showing screens, people interacting, AI exhibition, and the results were more realistic and more as a mega exhibition. Here I was also iterating to experience with the screens and how are they going to be, what is the proper lighting, and Midjourney gave me a really outstanding results so far. So the research is still ongoing. My open questions, can AI be their replacement of CAD? Can designers and architects replace their tools with trained models to produce their designs? How architectural visualization will become much more advanced? And for the final part of my presentation, I'll be sharing with you some of my works in Midjourney. I'm interested in biophilic architecture and how this can create new mega spaces with an essence of spiritual and spaces. So this is also another iterations, and my presentation is done. Thank you so much. Looking forward for questions and discussions.
Thank you, Sara. Great presentation, great work. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Our next presenter is Christo van der Hoven. Christo, are you ready? Are you there?
Yep, ready to go.
Sara, yeah, Sara, please unshare the screen. Thanks. Well, Christo is an interdisciplinary designer interested in computational design, digital fabrication, and the network knowledge production of rapidly reformulating cross-disciplinary design teams. He's the CTO of Sustainabuild in Johannesburg, technical director of Mass Timber Technology, affiliated with the University of Johannesburg Faculty of Art, Design, and Architecture, and March from University of Cape Town. Hello, Christo. You can start. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So yes, my name is Christo. I'm dialing in from Johannesburg today. And like Angelica mentioned, my background is in architecture, and I'm the technical director of MTT, which is a young engineered timber manufacturing company here in Johannesburg, and we produce CLT and GLT. The work that we do involves quite a bit of computational design and digital fabrication at the building scale, and also we have to quite often get to grips with how projects and teams are starting to change as software develops and different types of hardware influence the design process. I'm quite lucky that my job allows me to tinker with new tools like Midjourney, and it's honestly been quite breathtaking to see how quickly these diffusion models have emerged and entered into open public use. Not to mention also how accessible they are. Generating these sorts of images has been incredibly helpful when conceptualizing new projects at MTT, as well as introducing new ways of building and new construction methods to clients and professional teams. Now, taking a step back, there's obviously also a few new questions that are coming up around creativity and authorship. Open questions about originality, data rights, embedded biases within these tools. But I believe that we should not just look at these in isolation or just superficially. And instead, it's really important that both sides of this coin are explored like we're doing here today. And so I'd like to immediately zoom in on the design process and look at where a tool like Midjourney can start rewriting the familiar sequence of design, much of which I think we all know is already deeply digital, highly automated, and takes place within one or many digital realms. For this, I'll continue to flash through images from different cases where we have already started using Midjourney in industry, while providing some kind of general reflections and some anecdotes. So broadly speaking, whichever branch of design we come from, architectural design, product design, fashion design, we can think of our design processes as moving from a state of high risk and high uncertainty via countless conscious and unconscious decisions to low risk, low uncertainty states, and hopefully a conclusive and tangible outcome that comes out at the end. Ironically, we often have to work quite speculatively and devote incredibly large amounts of time and effort and energy to this de-risking process for our clients. And we, in turn, as the designers and architects, assume a lot of that risk. So in this process, we use a range of representational devices. We use diagrams, plans, sections, 3D models, renderings, all to synthesize a design from what is often a very vague initial image and vision for a project. And so a design idea may live for a very long time in isolation in our mind's eye or on the screens in our studios before it is really materialized and brought into the light of day at a presentation. And so for me, probably the most exciting prospect for these new text-to-image tools is to start rewriting and reorganizing this tedious process by producing compelling and immersive conceptual imagery incredibly quickly and very intuitively, and also doing this all very early on in the design process. We can then use these images to rapidly steer the direction of a project and to make crucial decisions with our clients quickly and efficiently. And so an example of this was for this project, which we can see here, where we were designing a mass timber stage set for a conference. And we were able to have quite nuanced and in-depth conversations about composition, material, light, and atmosphere through these high-resolution digital sketches, long before even touching a 3D model. And then using very similar prompts, we were also, of course, able to create a handful of unique representations of complex ideas in minutes instead of days. And then, very similar to Tim, who spoke first, very similar to Tim's process, we can then start reverse engineering the most relevant or compelling of these images to extract the specifics of a scheme. So in this instance, starting off with these images, we were then able to kind of extract reconfiguration plans for how our stage set might evolve and adapt throughout the playing out of this conference. And so, in the early stages of any project, there will always be these leaps from the abstract to the tangible. And we are already finding Midjourney to be incredibly valuable as a tool and something that we can use in almost real time to collaboratively translate from the broad to the very, very specific, which helps reduce the gap between us and all of our clients. An alternative design process that leans heavily on this language method to create aesthetic common ground is incredibly helpful. And the benefit of this kind of process is certainly worth all of the difficulties of having to navigate the complex questions of ownership and originality and so on. And so to wrap up, I think the future of this sort of text-to-image or these sort of text-to-image tools is really going to be fascinating. Especially interesting will be to see how linguistic diversity could influence prompts and prompt engineering. For us, and I think many of us here today, English is not our only language. And the idea of drawing on different dictionaries and associations and interpretations will undoubtedly lead to quite extraordinary results. In South Africa, we have 11 official languages. So it's really interesting to think about how using a language like Zulu or Xhosa or Afrikaans could influence how we generate these new types of architecture and how these spatial meanings and metaphors might be unique to each of these different languages. I really do think we've just begun this first chapter of how AI will influence how we articulate design. And we're really excited to see how these sorts of new spatial imaginaries are going to start forming. So thank you very much. It's really been a pleasure to participate today.
Thank you, Christo. Very, very great presentation. I myself am very interested in wood technology too, as well. And I guess it's all a matter also of the database that we can upload on these platforms to get this international, using our own words and things, and nationalities and regional aspects. But anyway, I'm really excited with all this work. I'm really happy to have picked you all to be here today. The next presenter is going to be Nasser Fakhouri. Nasser, are you ready?
Hi.
Yeah. Hi. Okay. Nasser is a Jordanian architect with a Bachelor of Architecture degree from the American University of Sharjah. And his area of practice emphasizes architecture that is contextually sensitive and socially integrated with the context of the MENA region. Through the implementation of local materials and methods, Fakhouri's work attempts to bridge the gap between architecture, locality, and vernacularity. Okay, Nasser, you can share your screen, please.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's very interesting talk so far from the other presenters. Like Angelica mentioned, my name is Nasser. I'm a Palestinian Jordanian designer and architect. I'm based in Abu Dhabi, UAE. I've studied architecture at the American University of Sharjah, and I've graduated last year. And since graduation, I've been working at the architectural office in Abu Dhabi. And in addition to that, I've been also involved in a Abu Dhabi Festival STEAM program, which is a part of Abu Dhabi's Music and Art Foundation. And as a part of that program, we're taking a online MIT course on additive manufacturing, which would result in a design solution using 3D printing. So my area of practice emphasizes architecture that is contextual and integrated within the context of the MENA region. I experiment with the local materials and methods to kind of bridge the gap between architecture and locality and vernacular. And I've been using kind of Midjourney to sort of explore that that stance even further. So I've been using AI to kind of start realizing how the vernacular context culture could be interpreted by artificial intelligence. And whether AI could start producing architecture that reacts to conditions in the MENA region. So one way I've been using AI is kind of sketch material qualities. So like I mentioned earlier, I'm really kind of invested in material studies, and AI allowed me to kind of explore different materials. So for example, how do those materials come together, right? Layering versus gradients, and even patterns. So one thing I noticed very quickly is that kind of Midjourney manipulates material in a certain way, and it kind of invokes certain reactions from light, shadow, and I started kind of integrating those reactions within the design process. So instead of sketching in my sketchbook, you would kind of start sketching light and shadow, right, through Midjourney. I think the verbal process is really important, and very quickly kind of started noticing how simple words could start shaping the outcome very quickly. So things like stereotomic and tectonic, and the outcome that produces. So I kind of noticed that the process now celebrates the thoughts of the architect more than other processes. So here we can kind of see how words like rectilinear or contrast or even dark light could start shaping the outcome generated by the AI. And something to note really quickly is that I kind of started using Midjourney while we were kind of involved in this competition at the office. It was a competition for a mosque design. And I started kind of using Midjourney as a side thing. And so in many areas, you kind of start noticing that a lot of those images invoke religious or spiritual emotions. And I've also been kind of experimenting across different scales. So at the scale of a hallway, for example, or even individual columns, or even zooming in and looking at individual windows or entrances, doors. Even sketching drawings, elevations, and how that could could translate to more three-dimensional images. So like I mentioned, the mosque I was involved in during at the office led me to kind of explore this sort of issue of light, shadow, and the politics even more through Midjourney. So like as closing remarks really quickly, I think the Midjourney AI is allowing us to kind of start interpreting architectural reactions in the MENA region in a different way. And I think the architectural process, the traditional architectural process is slowly shifting. Like we've seen the other presentations, I think it's less about one taking over the other, but more about them working together. I think we're going to discuss this even more in the discussion at the end. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Very, very interesting. You bring the vernacular questions here. It's very, very, very interesting for us to debate this too. Thanks a lot. Now we're gonna, the next session, we selected 2 designers for this. And they're not limited to this selection, but it was just as a starting point. So we picked up two designers for landscape design, eco design, and sustainability, which is the first one is going to be Essa. Essa, are you ready? Essa, you here? No.
Yeah. Essa seems to be here, but if she's not ready, then we can move on. Who's the next one?
We can move on. Yeah, the next one is Ash Ali. Ash, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. You can share your screen. So Ash is a full stack data scientist, applied machine learning practitioner, design thinker, technologist, fintech innovator, analytics ninja, as you posted, and exponential entrepreneur. He has been working with teams to pursue high-impact exponential AI-enabled technology applied to carbon economics, DeFi, space tech, wearables, life support systems, space tech. Okay, floor is yours, Ash, please. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for the intro. I'm a little bit of a polymath. I love the idea of using AI to help us with design restrictions and limitations as part of the design process. What I've done here is kind of go the way, my starting point is really at carbon reduction and sustainability. And where I went from there is looking at connected systems and stacking on top of each other exponential technologies like, vertical farms, as you can see here, vertical forests, things that really kind of add to designing future cities that incorporate different ecosystems into them. So we're talking about lifestyle, wildlife habitat, preserving that, building on that, and also adding more, I guess, you can call it more, I guess, future forward kind of design to cities. I'm looking to implement some of these solutions on more of on a city basis. So we're looking, a lot of these designs are incorporating future technologies, 5-10 years out, including, flying vehicles, which are very sustainable in terms of not requiring a lot of infrastructure to operate, which preserves our existing habitat and allows us to kind of, go have this exponential impact in holistic design. This is some of the conceptual design work that I've done on, middle of city kind of architecture. This is just a top-down view, but the idea is to, incorporate these multiple systems, life systems on Earth with our human progress. So how do we do that? I've used here, I've used actually a combination of Dalle, Midjourney, and Dream to come up with some of these designs. They're really based on, from my design process thinking, they're really based on just adding certain restrictions in design work. So really kind of applying industrial design thinking to how do we embed technology, digital technologies that are AI enabled, like Internet of Things, extending that to smart cities, extending that to ecosystem preservation and sustainability. So how do we transform our cities? These are the questions that lead my architectural design. I am currently looking at doing a lot of this kind of project work in some North American cities, like Toronto, which is my hometown. It's really interesting because what we can do with this is really take, have a really powerful assistant to help us through our design process in a lot of these concepts. I do have the benefit of actually tinkering and tweaking with all of these models myself. So I do kind of, not really concerned about authorship and that sort of thing, just because I dig into the weeds myself. But the idea here is still to, implement these, I think, is probably the most important thing. So as we kind of imagine this future where we can, avoid catastrophic intra-ecosystem extinction and that sort of climate-fueled disruption to our world, how do we take that back? How do we design systems that incorporate wildlife, incorporate all sorts of life-supporting ecosystems on our planet? That's about it for me.
Thank you, Ash. Thank you. Very interesting presentation. Essa, are you back?
Hello.
If not, we can. Oh, hi.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So Essa Lin, she explores a relationship between human and nature in landscape context and generative imaginary landscapes through Studio Iceria. Recently working on landscape planning, agriculture and environment projects in rural northern New Territories and Lantau Island in Hong Kong. She's a graduate member of the Hong Kong Institute of Landscape Architects. Welcome, Essa. Can you share your screen?
So I'm Essa from Hong Kong. Thank you, Professor Ponzio.
You can put on full screen. Can you put on full screen?
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you for the invitation to present and the chance to hear from practitioners from around the world. Through the Hong Kong verse, I'm analyzing how these super exciting new tools such as Midjourney are providing significantly faster visualization methods to drive and reverse design processes beyond traditional modeling and rendering. So my first collection of images, reimagining rural landscape and islands, we're looking into the degree of realistic interpretations of Northern New Territories as the area of my current agricultural and ecological planning sites. Contrasting to people's usual perception of dense urban Hong Kong, it bears a super mountainous landscape, and in rural areas and islands where 3/4 of 11,000 square kilometers of land are categorized as countryside and landscape rising up to the height of 1,000 meters. So these generated images have achieved a surprising resemblance of these actual rural conditions where the mountains are high, dramatic, covered in woodlands, and even in the indication of where settlements are located, usually at the base of the mountains, all being visualized closely to reality. What creates this imaginary abstraction that is driving new design ideas for us are the emphasis and scale of the subject matters prompted.
For example, aquaponic farms, honeycomb glass houses, encased planting, and fish ponds. These are in comparison really emphasized in the foregrounds in terms of scale, detail of the field and spatial planning, structures, and distribution. Zooming into the detailed facilities of sustainable design, where these images are able to create sketch-like technical drawings, including plantation, water systems, structural components to give ideas of how some of these designs could be fabricated. The changing island conditions are ahead of us through Lantau tomorrow with large-scale reclamation plans. Here I'm revisualizing these possibilities of island distributions where facilities for environmental conservation have been incorporated into the prompt. The great things I've found about these visualizations are the level of reality that they have generated and are preserving the cultural, traditional fishery villages, communities, and vernacular architectures, which are super important for this island. Through cultural reinterpretations, I'm looking at how generated images interpret festival environment in a cultural district in Western Kowloon. It's able to provide some very vague cultural references such as large red and yellow banners and symbols that are looking like Chinese text and characters, but completely not legible text to represent festival vibes in Hong Kong. However, these are hugely exaggerated full moons and away from reading the text prompts are very logical emphasis. And here is kind of the real condition of our West Kowloon space. With prompts indicating mapping plans showing cultural district and landscape, the visualization has chosen representations closest to axonometric views with symbols that are also resembling text and map legends and diagrammatic information, but are not quite legible to any languages. In visualizing design processes and reconfiguring form. For an upcoming audiovisual landscape installation that will be presented in a local design festival detour, I'm working with an media collective DCAT presenting an indoor 3x4 meter immersive landscape, multisonic, that will surround visitors with solfeggio healing frequencies and responsive lighting for interactive experience, intending to heal people and bring them closer to nature. During this design process in the past month, we've been extensively using these ideas from Midjourney, creating these immersive spaces and tree canopies where people can all gather. In this way, we've generated new references to forms, materiality, spatial conditions, atmospheric references without having to directly look at too many other artists and designers' recognizable works, providing us more freedom to create entirely new original designs and surreal spatial experiences. Some examples I consider less successful prompts were in generating the frequencies related to solfeggio frequencies, where these generations were unable to recognize what really the forms of these frequencies were, providing fairly vague waveforms match with landscape forms. So to wrap up, I want to question whether our future environment where designers' roles and methodologies are dramatically shifted by AI generative formats, and whether collaborative visualization and communication between AI and humans are able to eventually design our physical feature landscape, environments, and culture, eliminating much of the physical involvement of human interventions. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Essa. Thank you. Very, very interesting, and thank you for your bringing us your process. It's very great to see you, and also from the view of a landscape designer. Well, now we are moving to the next block. We selected order than like a design process, not that, but I'm really happy that everybody's showing their own processes, which I think is great, rather just showing the images. And then the first one we're going to call is Pedro Venegas Rodríguez. Are you here? Yes. Hi, Pedro.
I'm here. Hello.
Pedro is a licensed architect based in Peru. He holds a bachelor in architecture and urbanism from University of Pedro Palma in Lima, Peru, and a master of science in computation and advanced design from Design Morphin in Bulgaria. So he's expert in procedural design, experience in BIM design, digital fabrication, parametric design, game design, metaverse, industry and experimental academia. Pedro also works as professor of digital fabrication at the Pontifical University of Catholic of Peru, and professor of procedural design and design marketing, computation, and advanced design master program. Welcome, Pedro. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Angelica, for the introduction. And welcome to everyone. I'm Pedro Venegas Rodríguez. I'm an architect and procedural designer from Peru. Please feel free to follow me on my Instagram account if you're interested in seeing my whole portfolio of computational design explorations. Since my undergraduate studies, I've really been obsessed with this idea of finding and learning the use of new digital tools and new technologies. I've always seen these new technologies as natural extensions of our creative human brains, helping us to see the world in different ways we are already accustomed. I work as a professor at the technology department of the Pontifical Catholic University of Peru, and also at the Design Morphing's Computational and Advanced Design Master Program. Also currently collaborating with Illusor as a verified creator to develop 3D assets for their metaverse. I'm the co-founder of Lima, which is a platform of 8 independent laboratories where we explore different aspects of the computational design field, both to model and, most important, education. Please follow us on our Instagram account, as we are very interested in knowing new professionals with our same passion and interest to make collaborations. What you're about to see today is a small repertoire about my own explorations and dialogues between me and an artificial intelligence tool such as Midjourney. I'm not here to show all my exploration with Midjourney, as this tool has the potential to create tons of outputs even with the most absurd and nonsense prompts. Several questions appeared to me once I started working with this tool. The way this kind of tool are being used right now, in my opinion, it's creating a particular scenario where we are not capable to recognize what art is supposed to be, or who's the one who has the copyright of these creations, or even if the outputs are supposed to have any economic value. The fact that complexity and access are very easy to process and create in this kind of tool made me wonder if that was the right direction for me. So I started dialoguing with this AI in a different term. As an extension of myself, I decided to reduce the amount of these excessive outputs, going from access to simplicity, trying to work with this AI in a whole different way as I usually do as a designer. So Playable Tiles is a work in progress that is based on the use of Midjourney to generate procedurally clean geometric images, such as isometrics, plans, or elevations that will work as new inputs in the generation of 3-dimensional puzzle playable spaces. This data is planned to be reconstructed and modeled using procedurally workflows inside Houdini FX. The goal with this project is to create a video game that will have the possibility to change environments and scenarios in real time, procedurally, by generating playable levels in Midjourney. At this point, this project is divided in 4 stages: generation, filtering, integration, and implementation. The generation stage is based on the creation and synthesis of the prompt to use in Midjourney. Projects such as Monument Valley, Fez, and Machinarium are used as reference. From this point, it starts the generation of isometric images in 2 variants, seamless and divergent, where the ability of different versions of the algorithm are explored. Weights are also explored inside the prompt, expecting to obtain images free of graphic excess and hierarchized correctly. In the filtering stage, this large amount of information generated is indexed manually. My goal here is to automate this process as well. However, this manual indexing, the evolution of, on this particular manual indexing, the evolution process of this database can be determined. This process will determine which images will be scaled to the highest resolution available in Midjourney. In this process, the use of digital upscaling tools such as Gigapixel AI was also used. Then the integration, where the procedural personality of Midjourney outputs require ad hoc modeling processes. In consequence, the huge amount of generated images is processed and unified through Houdini FX, where a script will allow go from 2D to 3D, and each tile can be patterned. In this stage, 2 variants are studied, seamless tiles and divergent tiles as well. And finally, the implementation. The final studies will be compiled as an HDA file, or Houdini digital asset, that will transport all the generated attributes to Unreal Engine 5, which will be the final destination platform where the final features will be implemented and compiled as a playable project. What you're seeing right now is a proof of concept. It's yet still in work in progress. So I really hope this exploration serves as inspiration for those architects who are really passionate about game design like me. So please don't forget to follow me on my Instagram account and feel free to write me anytime soon you want. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Pedro. That was too fast. I wanted to know more about your process.
I made it in 5 minutes
Lovely.
exactly, hopefully.
Okay, thanks. Yes, 5 minutes.
Thank you
very
so
short,
much.
but Thank you to keep the time.
Thank you.
Okay. The next presenter is Risa Kagami. Are you here? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Risa is a registered architect in Germany. Her focus is computational design with environmental factor and materiality. She was a member of Digital Fabrication Lab at University of Tokyo, and she worked at Copenhagen and Vienna and currently at Hoven Architects. Thank you, Risa. You can share your screen, please.
Yeah. Hi, I am Risa Kagami from Japan, and I'm glad to participate today. Like Angelica mentioned, I studied architecture at University of Tokyo, and I did exchange study at Technical University Munich. For my master, I was especially interested in computational design and digital fabrication. After my master study, I started working at Kopimebra in Vienna and currently working at Ingenhofen. Today, I would like to share some experiments for text-to-image to 3D process. For text-to-image, I used Midjourney AI, and for image to 3D process, I used Rhino and Grasshopper. For image to 3D process, I am using grayscale value as height and depth mapping for 3D deformation. As an example, you can see this black and white radial gradient, and white color part is getting higher as geometry. Another simple example is checkerboard pattern. You can see some differentiation with height and division of base surface, which defines smoothness and tightness of the input surface with control points. So this is the first experiment with Midjourney, and the prompt is fish scale architecture. And I made a grayscale image out of this original image. And here you can see some 3D deformation with different heights. And so the surface is deforming based on the grayscale value. You can also see the wireframe version with control points. So this one is the output image. The next one is also the same text input. Since this image is almost symmetry, I use this one as an unit. So it's like continuous facade skin with deformation. You can also see the deformation process. So it's the white color part is going out and kind of interesting skin facade. This is the output perspective and also asymmetry. The third experiment is with this image. The text input is brain color pattern. And again, I made grayscale based on original image. And the grayscale could also be adjusted using Photoshop to change the height map. Also, the image color itself could also be adjusted like this. And first and second experiments were based on planar surface. For this experiment, base geometry is deformed more like globally, and base geometry could also be sphere or tolers or other geometric primitives. You can see some wireframe and texture version of the geometry. So this one is the output geometry with color and with the grayscale deformation, with wireframe, and also top view. It might be interesting maybe using this method with materiality and structure as well. So now I introduced 3 experiments with different setup. I would like to continue those experiments further. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Another.
Risa, before
Sorry.
we move on, can you turn on your camera? Just wanted to make sure people can put a name to a presentation. But thank you, Risa. Sorry, Angelica.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. No, just I thank you for keeping the 5 minutes. I'm just realizing the 5 minutes too short. You need to know more about your works, but great, Risa. Then later I want to know if you try to 3D print any of your experiments. The next presenter is Fadhil. Are you here, Fadhil?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Okay, yeah. Fadhil is an architectural designer based in New York City, currently working as an adjunct faculty visualization course coordinator and fabrication lab coordinator at the New York Institute of Technology. Previously, Fadhil has worked as an architectural designer for Foster Partners in New York, and he holds a Master of Architecture professional degree from the Bartlett School of Architecture, University College London, has completed his Bachelor of Science in Architecture from Texas Tech University. Thank you, Fadhil. You can start now.
Great, excellent. I assume you guys can see my screen, hopefully.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So yeah, so I'll just dive right into it. But just before that, just wanted to kind of briefly repeat what Angelica just said. My name is Fadhil. I am based in New York City. I work as an adjunct faculty and a coordinator of the fabrication lab here in New York City for New York Institute of Technology. Before that, I was architectural designer at Foster & Partners for about 4 years. And prior to that, I was at the Bartlett School of Architecture where I finished my master's. My work is somewhere between, computational design, material exploration, and digital fabrication. Yeah, and I'll jump right into it. And, starting with the title, capitalizing on incompleteness and obsolete three-dimensionality. And, component thinking has always been an obsession of mine since I started grad school. And as soon as I started, exploring Midjourney specifically, I mean, I explored with other platforms, but I think Midjourney was the one that sort of stuck with me, and I wanted to give it as much of my time as possible before I started to sort of jump around between the other platforms. And the first thing that came to mind, and after having explored the platform, in a more sort of fluid way, I decided to really concentrate and try to see if I can replicate a process that I had started experimenting with myself and trying to solve or kind of force AI to do what I want it to do instead of having to explore what it is. And the reason for that is I kind of was a bit disappointed in the sense that Midjourney was giving me a lot of kind of finalized in context images. And I really don't want that. I mean, I'm more interested in, lack of context, a lot of sort of close-up component-driven qualities and characteristics. So I started, exploring with social housing so that the scale of it is not too big. And I wanted to force AI to give me as much of sort of the textual quality of these components. And starting with these sort of social housing components, where I wanted to see depth, wanted to see some sections and elevations specifically, without any context. And, as I started exploring the qualities and characteristics, whether it's sort of the curvilinear language or the orthogonal language versus the sort of the filigree that's on there, of course, specifying it with very particular words, and, furthering that research with a different or sort of a couple of rounds of the same prompts, implementing some color. And then I was more interested in trying to see how AI can actually assemble these components, if it's capable of taking these parts and assembling it itself. And the way I did it is by sort of taking these component images and feed it back into the AI. And I think it takes about maximum of 3 images as far as I'm aware of. So I started kind of combining some of these characteristics, and after many trials and different prompts, I started to sort of force AI to give me an assembly of the different components, which was kind of encouraging at the beginning, regardless of the context that's already here. We can see some of the translations of these, sort of windows, colors, textures on there. Then the next exploration was, what if I create my own material? All these materiality, and this is not a real material. Sort of mixing leather and silk, and different sort of either it's a rough material or more on the smoother or glossy side. And I was more interested in trying to merge it with some of the components that I've already produced to see if AI is actually capable of doing that. And the result here was more or less okay. I mean, I was okay with the result here. It's not exactly what I wanted. We can see it sort of implementing the color, some of the textures on the previous images. And of course, I played with the parameter, how much of the influence I wanted to sort of leave an imprint on the final results. Then the next strategy was sort of trying to see if it actually can replicate some of the computational operations that we deal with in different softwares. And the Boolean operation to me has always been sort of core in my personal work. And so just a way to carve out spaces and sort of see the inside and the outside of the same object. Of course, the word Boolean does not mean anything to AI, so I had to work around it in a way while maintaining sort of the lack of context, just to see how we can zoom in and out. And looking at the characteristics of the piece itself, then I was interested again in trying to implement some of the fabrication tools. Now, again, fabrication is not just 3D printing or sort of or CNCing or different kind of robotic arm technologies, but also there's some old school wood joinery systems that we can even capitalize on, and trying to see if AI can generate that more or less successful way. But again, I'm more interested in trying to have it be aware of what's actually doing and assemble it for me. And then there was, I didn't get to the final result right away. There was sort of an intermediate result where some of the joinery was sort of combined with the Boolean operations, and I was rather pleased with the final result. It's good to see that we can feed information back to AI, and between feeding information, feeding images, and also giving AI sort of thumbs up or thumbs down when it gives me results, and it kind of responds to that, which is quite encouraging. Then there was another round of explorations where I wanted to look at components, but vertical components. Again, trying to see if using similar prompts that can highlight the Boolean operations, that I wanted to see if I can look at potentially, give it fabrication aesthetics. If I tell it, it looks like a 3D printed object or a plastic object or a glossy object. And then, start to create, again, the form of it is kind of driven by Midjourney itself. I mean, to me, the form is irrelevant more or less. I'm more interested to see the components on their own, reading the characteristics of the quality of it at a sort of zoomed out or zoomed in level, and then trying to push AI to try to assemble that for me. And then, after that, try to combine all the previous 3 iterations of the vertical components, and it created sort of this vertical glass floating city, which is a prompt that I asked it to do. But of course, after feeding the images themselves, and after having given some key words that I've used in the previous prompts, and after many trials, AI starts to recognize that. And again, it's another sort of encouraging result. And the final thing is, I started bringing in some explorations and wanted to just sort of talk to AI in a very sort of plain architectural language to talk about curvilinear, rectilinear, orthogonal geometries, trying to see what it actually recognizes. And of course, I'm more interested in the sort of hybrids of things and how we can produce that, focusing on the textures and keeping it the same sort of color or material. Then I sort of did it the other direction, where I wanted to ask for more faceted geometry in a scattered way, not necessarily assembled. Again, feeding it the exact same prompts, looking at different components, understanding the qualities and the characteristics of it, and then asked AI to sort of combine all the previous methods And, you know, now I see, you know, I'm more encouraged by the fact that it's more responsive than creative on its own. You know, again, as I was saying earlier, I'm less interested in sort of trying to have AI give me finalized images because, you know, the aesthetics becomes oversaturated, and whether things are in context or not, this is kind of irrelevant. I'm more interested to see how it actually understands component and how it actually connects to, you know, a component that's next to it, or how it transitions into a different material, how does it work with opacities, how does it work with gradients, because all of these sort of different methodologies for me are recipes for fabrication methods. And, you know, I can look at this and say there are 3 or 4 different tools I can use, regardless if I can produce the actual 3-dimensional model of this. You know, that's kind of, to me at the moment, is irrelevant, the 3-dimensionality of this, as much as that I want to see the new kind of intricacies, the new gradients that I see that I've never seen in other models before. Maybe we imagined it at some point, because we all worked with inspiration and images every time we designed, but it's good to see visually. And then the last image is sort of pushing it to the next level, and trying to assemble as many of the scattered components that I saw previously. And at the moment, I kind of put Midjourney on hold, and sort of in the process of trying to translate this, not necessarily 3-dimensionally. I might need some 3-dimensional object that we can maybe potentially 3D print. But I guess I just wanted to close out with this, is that I think as architects or designers, you know, we're not quite threatened by this yet, because we do have the ability to read its spatial qualities and material, and we're still experts and rather conscious of what's physically feasible and what kind of sort of fabrication methods we currently have, and what kind of fabrication method that we can push forward. And, you know, I think objects like this will start to propel or push that, you know, sort of, you know, industry forward. So yeah, that pretty much concludes my presentation. Thanks a lot for Digital Futures, and my information is at the bottom right, my Instagram and my email if you'd like to reach out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the very, very interesting processes. And I'm just wondering if you should try to mix, put your inputs of Midjourney into Dalle, because Dalle can have this as starting images, but we can talk about that later.
Sure, absolutely.
Thanks. Now our final block is dedicated to a little bit different kind of work. It's an arts and fashion and design. And we have three designers, well, 3 female designers, very talented. The first one is Fernanda Olivares. Are you here, Fernanda, with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Hi, Fernanda. Fernanda is a Mexican visual artist who started from a fine arts education. Fernanda has exhibited in multiple events and biennales worldwide in Italy, Mexico, the Netherlands, and US. She has received prizes in the areas of women's STEAM, along with mentoring young students to pursue arts with technological sustainable view. Fernanda, can you share your screen, please? If you want to add anything to your bio, feel free to do it. Sure. It's a very long one.
Well, as Angelica said, my background is more like a transdisciplinary one. I'm a dancer as well. That's why all my research of study is the body. I also have, I'm studying a master's in art and science at ITMO University in Russia, and I am currently also doing many projects with the Fab Lab at Mexico City with digital fabrication. I have like a strong background on that one. So my main interest is how does the AI interprets the body. We have like some obvious images, for example, the faces, the blurred faces, but I was more interested in the body. So I started from the beginnings of these platforms working with BQGAN, and afterwards I tried Dalle, Midjourney, and Stable Diffusion. And as for me, I worked much more with Dalle, even with the censorship. So I am working this hybrid work between the artificial intelligence and then transforming it to painting. So part of my reflections are when learning anatomy as a visual artist, how we as humans make mistakes in proportion or in certain areas of like hands and feet. And the AI does the same. But how do we see that AI's mistake? So I see also body as architecture. And sometimes when we ask the AIs to make complete full bodies, they usually distort. So you can have like a realistic person in a very simple pose, like walking or doing everyday activities. But I was interested in the technicalities of dance and how was like this conclusion between the space where the body was and the body itself. One of the discoveries I did as well while working a lot with prompt making and all the platforms was that when I asked about a dancer, about a female dancer, there was a little bit of a bias because there was like this typical stereotypical view of a ballerina with a tutu, etc. So I started working with male dancers, and I had like a stronger approach to human anatomy, to contortion, and to another reinterpretation of choreography. So how these strange anatomical positions or glitches that the AI does might be interesting for a new conception of a virtual body. And well, here I have some examples of how these anatomical figures become a bit more realistic, a bit less cartoonish, and we can see again the issue of the hands. It's interesting also how this machine do the hybrid like machine human bodies, like look at the feet. And of course there's been a lot going on how these platforms interpret the hands and the feet. So they're wrong usually, a bit more different than real hands, but here I had like interesting outputs, especially with a zoom. And how easily do we get to these images after asking the AI like these twisted bodies? Like I like working with this confusion, with this that you see the image at first glance and you see it completely real, but when you start analyzing it, you see like certain glitches. And well, seeing body as a whole is how this body has main points. And if you translate it to reality, to dance, you can see that there's a range of movement, effort spots where you can somehow realize that they are not correct. Like some figures are just floating. Sometimes when you look closer, there's a third leg. But like getting to these clean outputs has been very difficult, because at first with using these models, everything was so distortion, and now it's been improving, but it has like a really interesting background in the prompt making as well. So how do we interpret these new possibilities and explorations? Well, by also making these data sets based on real human movement and somehow coherence. So my interest now is making also these translations of these images, not only to paintings, but also to digital fabricated objects like 3D prints, etc., and how these can be a new conception of our body, and of course also of a body for the metaverse, for example. And well, I'm really glad to be here with you, and I'll leave you here my Instagram as well to follow through. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fernanda. Thank you. Very, very interesting to see another point of view from a dancer and also a designer. That's great. We also sometimes focus too much on architecture and forget to do architecture for people. So it's important to bring a little bit of the human body too. Our next presenter is Kate Reed. Kate, are you here?
Hello.
Hi. Hi, Kate is a Boston-based designer connecting humans, computers, and the natural world through wearable interfaces. After becoming the first graduate of the MIT back at Nouveau Studio, Kate received dual undergraduate degrees from Brown University and the Rhode Island School of Design. Kate also pioneered the Artist Residency Program at the South System as the inaugural Artist in Residence. Okay, Kate, you can start. Thank you for being here.
Hello. I assume you all can see my screen.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Beautiful. Awesome. So I'm Kate, and I'm going to talk about, or my work's kind of focused on designing interfaces to connect humans, computers with the natural world. But today I'm going to talk about really how AI generated images have the ability to trick our human eye and our senses and the senses of other species, and ultimately really altering our sense of reality. So I'm Kate, I'm a Boston-based designer. I've been building wearable technology for the past decade. And I'm really interested in how do we kind of grow technology and grow this next generation of computers. So that work my work focuses a lot on computationally growing things where I'm the artist in residence at the Dassault System. I work to kind of grow these natural systems and processes to kind of make like these digital twins of natural systems. And then also, I'm also the artist in residence at a molecular biology lab, where I work with synthetic biology to actually kind of hack living organisms and to enhance living organisms to actually grow them into computers themselves. But AI is actually a huge part of my practice and a huge kind of inspiration and a really interesting portion of like kind of fitting in between this relationship between digital, physical, and natural. And so today I really want to talk about, using AI to create images of trickery and creating kind of these glitches in our current systems between the digital, the physical, and the natural. So first of all, is like kind of how do we define a glitch? And really, to me, a glitch is an occurrence that can't really be logically explained. It's these interesting moments, that just, they don't make sense and they create these glitches in our systems. And this idea, of course, was very well shown through the movie The Matrix, this idea of kind of a glitch in this computer system. But what I'm really interested in is how can we use AI to create kind of these digital glitches and these digital kind of moments of confusion. And so kind of the first project that I'm showing today is an older piece of work back from 2020, and this was using GANs. So GANs are kind of the like pre-Midjourney, basically, looking at kind of how we can feed a GAN, which is an algorithm, images, and then it starts to develop its own images based off of that. And so this project is called I Spy, and it was made by feeding a GAN algorithm thousands of images of moths, as well as thousands of images of human eyes. And then kind of what happened was this wearable device, the GAN ended up creating kind of these images of moths with human eyes on its back. And these images were then put into kind of a wearable device that was constantly generating new pieces. And ultimately what ended up happening with these kind of human eye moth pieces was they were able to trick surveillance cameras. So a surveillance camera would see one of these generated images of a moth and a human eye together, and it would think that it was a real human eye. And what I found was that kind of by turning this into a wearable device that was constantly generating new eyes, it actually allowed you to be almost invisible to certain surveillance systems, because the surveillance would pick up kind of the images around your neck as opposed to the images, as opposed to kind of your real eyes. And so this was kind of the first example of how we can really start to use AI to really trick kind of our synthetic systems. Surveillance is a man-made system, and how we can start to trick that with computers. And so then kind of comes this next project, which was looking at how can we trick kind of natural systems using AI as well. So this was another project using a GAN. Again, this was kind of past work, but trained with thousands of images of flowers. And so ultimately what this GAN produced was all of these synthetic flowers that are not real flowers. They will never kind of necessarily be a real flower in the natural world. But what we could start to do was input these flowers into our natural world and see kind of how many different natural species that we could start to trick and create kind of these like glitches in the system. So we've kind of looked at how do we trick kind of natural, how do we trick synthetic, and then kind of the next kind of version of that is, we're getting to this point where we're creating thousands and thousands of images every day, as a whole society and as a content as content creation becomes such a huge industry where we're creating so many images by computers that are really being read for computers. And it starts to bring into question this idea of what is real and what is not. You know, a few years ago, it was really interesting, this idea of kind of deep fakes in this way that we could trick kind of humans into thinking other humans were making things. But we're really starting to wonder what's real and what's not. And so this is kind of an image of a microscopic organism that's found in the deep sea. And this is kind of, again, a biologically inspired image. But the thing about this image is it's actually not real. It's a Midjourney generated image. But this image very much looks real. You look at it and you think this is real. And so it starts to kind of have this conversation between, you know, what is real and what is fake? What does it look like when we start to make deep fakes of real organisms or things that we don't even know? Because ultimately we're living on this planet where we have, you know, only discovered such a small portion of the species on this planet and such a small portion of what's kind of what we're sharing with this planet. And so then we can start to use Midjourney to create these digital kind of deep fakes of things that we've never necessarily seen before. And they're really starting to trick the human eye. And so the question is kind of then like, how does this evolve? Where do these go from? Are these creatures going to become living? Is this a creature that if you show to a cat on a screen and it's moving, the cat thinks that's a real animal? And so it's a really exciting and interesting time to kind of look at how we can create these digital glitches in our systems that actually trick our systems, and using AI kind of as a creation of a glitch. Because ultimately, you know, robots were just an idea developed by science fiction, and then they became a reality. And so using Midjourney, it's really interesting to see kind of these ideas that we can have. You know, these organisms, we're at a time kind of in our society and biologically where we can actually start to create some of these organisms. So it's really kind of exciting to think of Midjourney as this like idea generating, kind of glitch generating system. And ultimately, this is really just the beginning. Here's my contact info, but thank you so much for listening, and I'm excited to chat with you more.
Great, Kate. Great questions. Great, thank you to add to this conversation, your work. Very, very great, very interesting. Our last presenter is Luísa Pires. Luísa, are you here? Hi. Luísa is an avid maker and fabricator who has most recently specialized in 3D printing and water and material research. She's also currently working in partnership with STEM students from Imperial College London for the design of smart wearable tech. Thank you, Luísa, for being here. You can share your screen.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, it looks great.
Yeah.
Okay, so my name is Luísa, and currently I'm part of these three projects, Electro Collective Group and Mobile Seaweed Farmer are my main ones. I'm a student at the AADRL, and I've been using Midjourney and prompts to communicate with project partners in STEM and to generate ideas visually for them, and also within the context of my research at the AADRL.
Luísa, you're muted. Luísa, you have to turn on your mic. Luísa, can you hear us? Your mic is muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, now we can hear you.
Sorry, I had a problem with my screen. Can you give me just a second to fix?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Angelica, do you have any reflections so far on what's happening with what you've seen?
I'm overwhelmed with so many interesting work. I'm really, really glad that everybody starts bringing their processes, and a lot of us are trying to integrate it into the process or the actual process and three-dimensionalize it, and not just as an input of our imagination, but something that we can really use it. And I see we are on a way getting to do it either way. So I think it's it's just very exciting moment to be here and to be working with these tools. I guess they're improving like, yes.
Luísa,
So-
you ready?
Okay, here now.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think so.
we can
Okay,
talk
wonderful.
later.
Thank you,
Okay.
Angelica. Go
ahead,
for it.
Go ahead.
So I was on this page. So there's two projects I'm currently involved in. One is the seaweed bioplastic and material research for AADRL, and the other one is a research in partnership with STEM students from Imperial College London into wearable tech. And at the moment, I started using Midjourney to explore some of the fabrication tools that we could use to bring these projects to life. So what is Midjourney for me and how do I use the prompt set? There's three parts to it. One is context, material, and method. So context refers to the part of the prompt which refers to what it is. And Midjourney, we'll see in some examples, can sometimes interpret context as material and material as context, from what I've understood so far. And then another interesting question is, what is the thing that we're generating made out of? So that would be material. In this case, I use porcelain, blue and white. And how is it made? So what sort of fabrication tools are we using to make it, which also translates into an interesting image, and you can create hybrids between the two. Then these were some of the outputs from the second version and the second iteration of the flowery dress prompt. And here I combined the porcelain with 3D printing and knitting, and they became stunningly beautiful and very interesting. So when I start to generate ideas to put into Midjourney, I start with a geometry or something like a shirt, and then a process of making and a material. And sometimes I can add two materials or I can add two processes of making to create hybrids and potentially explore them in the real physical world. This is a hyperbolic geometry crocheting with air and pearls. And as you can see, the AI interpreted the air as context, which placed it on the face, but it can also interpret it as material and placed it on the geometry itself, which is quite interesting. And this was a project made with a partnership team, Skin Machine from AADRL. They're currently exploring cellulose and how they can adopt cellulose growth to sheets. And so we tried to generate some images in partnership with them. This is our seaweed 3D printed bioplastic. These are some material images as well, generated with the three most important keywords. So context, material, and method. And this is how I've been structuring the prompts. On this particular case, we used the specific species of the seaweeds that we were using, and we came out with some more intriguing results. These were woven as well. And these are more detailed images. So my other project that I'm currently involved in is in a team with STEM research students from Imperial College London, and you can follow us. We're called Electric Collective Group on Instagram. What became really interesting was to use words that the client's brief described their ideas in the generation of images. So we generated some EMG shirts. We're currently looking at ECG, but we're aiming to expand into EMG and EEG technologies as well. But this was an initial Rhino model, and it took a while to make. And the potentials of Midjourney is to bring to life ideas to clients very quickly and to use what the client is feeding us as well through their own words. And then these were some generated material research for the t-shirt, as with the three keywords that I mentioned before. These also explored, came out with different results depending on how you word the prompt and also depending on which Midjourney version you use. Then they came, like the latest version, actually demonstrates more realistic prototypes, and these start to appear very real and similar to a technology that could be potentially buildable in the future. And So context, material, and method, that's the prompt. Where do we go next? My answer is fabrication. And we started exploring some of the hybrids between the cellulose skin machine project and our own project, the mobile seaweed farm project. And so we heat press cellulose sheets against seaweed bioplastic sheets. And we managed to come up with a material that is actually quite similar to leather and quite resistant and very strong. And potentially, obviously, biodegradable and healthy for the environment. And for our ECG, we're currently trying to develop a minimum viable product, and we've had a product that worked, but we want to take this further. And so if you'd like to get in touch with us, feel free to follow us on Instagram or get in touch directly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Luísa. Great work. I forgot to ask, where are you from? Portugal?
Portugal.
Ah, bem-vinda.
Obrigada.
Okay, great work. I'm really happy, and I cannot say that many how happy I am with the selection. I mean, not that everybody that sent it was very interesting, but
Angelica, your camera's off. I think
okay,
we're
sorry.
in Q&A. We're in Q&A right
okay.
now. Yep.
Let me fix it. Okay.
So everyone, if you don't mind turning on your cameras for our Q&A, and then we want to, after Angelica makes her statement, if we can invite Dr. Neil Leach to say a few words. Angelica?
Yeah, I was going to call him. So I just want to thank everybody for being here, and how happy I am with all the work that you showed. This is very exciting to see how you're using it in different ways, but always also trying to integrate it on the process, and I can see like great results so far. So it is not just an image making tool, but it's much more than that, and that's what gives me this feeling of excitement. And anyway, be part of this is great. So I'd like to call Professor Neil Leach, please, to say something, and I think he's very excited to see all this young researchers and all your work. It's really interesting.
Yeah, well, actually, I mean, this is fantastic today. I'm just watching and listening and absorbing. But it's great to see how people are taking up these tools and running with them. I think that you can't predict what that's going to be, but some very inventive ways of involving them in the process, which is really inventive. I just say tomorrow we have another session when we're going to be looking at this and bringing in some people to talk about it. And I think it's an open question now how this is going to inform the design studio. And what I would say is that these diffusion platforms were a bit of a surprise, even for those of us who are working in the field. And it's suddenly we moved on from GANs to something extraordinary, and there's something emerging. We're seeing history in the making. So I mean, we're just watching this and seeing what's evolved. But I do think it's a kind of crucial watershed moment. But I also think we're just talking about the kind of the tip of the iceberg in a way. I think what is in process right now, I always say this about the thing, is AI software that's going to take the whole realm to a different area. This is a sketching tool, but the rest of the whole process is going to be radically overhauled in 3 to 5 years. Architecture as we know it will not be recognizable. And I think it's important to try and position yourself in the debate, as it were, because these are the skill sets that are going to take you forward. And finally, I want to say this simply that we call our organization DigitalFUTURES because we're interested in the future, in the education, and in the young minds who are part of that and who are going to be our future. So you are our digital future, and it's great to see that it's alive and well. I'll just keep quiet and step back and just absorb all this. It's been a very amazing session today so far.
Gustavo, do you want to say something? A few words, please.
Yeah, well, I wanted to go back to Neil real quickly. Tomorrow is part of a doctoral consortium, and who's speaking? Because I think you're also featuring some of the top people in the field in architecture, correct?
Yes, I mean, we've got a range because we've got people like Andrew Cudlis or Daniel Bolajan who are really, I think, from a kind of computational view, really point of view, really pushing things, but we're also interested in some students at the other end, who are just learning these things, and we're just tracking this. We're just recording all this data of what's happening. It's no, I just think it's an incredibly rapid pace that things are happening right now. If you think that we only started using GANs in architecture 2019, and these diffusion platforms, it's like Moore's law going on steroids. Things are really happening at an incredible rate, and I find this incredibly exciting, but I also find it terrifying at some level. So it's anyway. Let me just keep quiet and watch from the
Sure.
sidelines.
I just wanted to, before Neil signs off, I wanted to share that we have a doctoral consortium. We have a successful, I think, almost year and a half of curriculum. And I think, you're speaking to one of the leading figures in the field of, AI and architecture in theory and philosophy. So I think like today we have a responsibility to ask really good questions. So thank you, Neil, for being here. So I think my input would be, thank you very much for all of your insights today. And I think my major question is, why is this important to you, and how will it change the world for the better? I think we have issues of climate and equity and inclusion, and we have issues of access. And I think Digital Futures is one of the platforms that we want to, I'm not sure if democratizing education, but I think we want to make it accessible to everyone. And I think my part in this group is to try to look at the intersections between architecture, art, and science research. Like, where is that intersection, and why do architects, designers, and artists and scientists need to work hard to change the system the way it's set up for things, not for people? So thank you very much for everyone. Risa, I know your camera was off, so I just wanted to have a shout out to her in her presentation, because I thought it was really great. And I wanted to say to each one of you, I put comments. Before we move on, can you please repeat the questions, Angelica, for today's discussion before we move further? Thank you.
Wait, yes. Well, the first, they're general questions, right? And as long as you were presenting, I made some specific questions. Later you can address them, but the general questions are, how does the trajectory of the scientific advancements in the area may influence the future of each field? How do you have like a group of designers, people related to architecture? So how do you see the dancer? And how do you see this is influencing your field more directly? And how does technology can change the way we work? I think it's already changing the way you work, at least what you presented. You're trying to incorporate it as much as you can, and we're kind of struggling to 3D-dimensionalize it, or to build it, or 3D print it. And I think it's going to be happening sooner than we think, but we are all trying our best efforts to do this. And the third question, what will be the future of art, architecture, and design in the age of AI? So how do you see, more like a question that we are already asking? And how will it affect our outlook as designers? Is our livelihood at risk? Also, like, I guess it's the news next book theme, the dark side of AI or something like that. But I'm personally not afraid of it. I'm really excited. I think we can integrate it really somehow smoothly. We're kind of doing this right now here, but we like to hear from you guys. So is anyone would like to start?
Yeah, is anyone really passionate to say something? Because there's a lot of passion that was shown today and a lot of talent. So anyone, please. Luísa,
well, can I just say something quickly, just briefly? It's actually the book's going to be called The Death of the Architect. But my point is this: that if you want to survive, you've got to design not buildings but your own future, and work with these tools and really find some way forward, because there are both opportunities and also challenges when you work with this field. Anyway, I'll keep quiet.
Do you want us to call her by names, or
no, don't be shy.
Yeah, I was actually, can I jump in here real quick? This is Fadhil from this side. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, yeah, excellent. So I just wanted to say, I mean, my first reaction when I first started exploring this sort of platform is that I'm kind of glad, in a sense, that Midjourney or any of the AI platform is kind of taking the load off of our shoulders in the sense that it is producing a high quality images that are extremely formal, and it gives us a lot of sort of oversaturation of extreme aesthetics or material exploration, in the sense that we suffered off of in the past 20 years or so. Every time we had a parametric computational tool, we just keep seeing this output of paper architecture. There's some fabrication exploration that's happening in the background. So if we sort of let AI do that sort of conceptual exploration and sort of focus our energy on trying to push the construction or manufacturing industry to sort of match that, because for the longest time, and even having worked in the industry for about 4 years or so, it's pretty evident that the construction or the manufacturing industry is way behind. We're still doing things that we started 100 years ago. So I'm kind of glad to see that AI, in a sense, taking this sort of exploration aspect of things and kind of automating it in a sense, so that we can put that to the side. And I would like to see personally a movement that's very similar to the arts and crafts movement or Art Nouveau that was a reaction to the Industrial Revolution back in the 1800s. If we have something similar to that, where we can actually really output some interesting and really amazing fabrication techniques or even tools, and that's what we can connect with, how we can connect with the tool as architects or designers. So that was kind of my first impression.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that Dalle, it's like prioritize somehow artists on their programs because it's easier to deal with the 2D and the printing area and produce graphic work. But and the challenge for us, which are architects, we want to three-dimensionalize it. We want to put it into work and want to put it in our buildings or our designs. So how do you do it? And I guess it's a long process, and always the construction industry is always a little bit behind because people are sometimes insecure of doing things that the general public won't accept, or we don't have the technology for it yet. Right. We can see this happen to when the construction movement started with the work of Sara and slowly, and then all of a sudden it just boom, start growing and showing. I think it's a matter of time. But yeah, I think it's just a matter of time that we're gonna, maybe it's happening even faster than we think. As, right. So
I think just AI might make it a little faster, actually.
Yeah. It's hard to keep up with all the advancements lately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to also go back to, let's say there's a callback here to Kate, Fernanda, or Luísa. Like, why was this important for you to incorporate technology, AI, into your practice? Like, what is the insight that you have that you see that some of your colleagues don't see?
Well, I think it's also a matter of processes. Times have changed a lot, and the processes of making images manually, like traditional painting, designing, sculpture, is so different. Now that you can really curate a series of images with these platforms, is really convenient as an artist, because while you're doing the prompt making, you're still having like more ideas and making them real in the physical world as well. So that has been personally really useful as a creator, and I think it's of course doing a shift in contemporary art as well, same as with Marcel Duchamp and the conceptual art, and also these fears that come along with AI, like the artists being replaced and the fear of being replaced by machines. But I think that it should be a combination and a collaboration between man-machine, and this could be like really much more interesting than the things we could do by ourselves.
I think it's also interesting to kind of look at AI in this larger context. Like here we are kind of as architects and designers looking at exploring kind of AI image generation tools. But ultimately, I mean, AI has been used in a lot of other fields for kind of a lot longer, thinking of like synthetic biology, how we can have train AI models that predict which proteins will bind to each other in the world of computer science and robotics. And so really ultimately what we're doing is really looking at how do we take kind of some of this latest and greatest technology and apply it to the same like art and design practice. And it's like, if it's applied everywhere else, why shouldn't we as artists and designers and engineers be able to start to try that and start to think with kind of AI? And so that's kind of what's really interesting to me, is not only the quantity that you can generate, but this idea that you can really train things to do work for you and kind of taking out our human bias. But obviously with AI, there's a ton of bias as to what images you're training and all these things. But to be able to kind of almost separate the artist from the work, which is a really exciting kind of piece that AI allows us to do, is separate ourselves.
Yeah, I have a bit more simpler, I think, answer to this. For me personally, I'm a very hands-on person and like to make stuff. And I figure that the AI lifted a lot of weight off my shoulders, having to generate images or having to speak to clients as well. And it has helped me a lot to transform, not only transform my ideas, but also show them to people without having the need to draw or get on a computer, and can spend more time with the machines and with fabrication. So to me, that AI lifts off the weight of our shoulders on a lot of things and helps us communicate with each other. Yeah.
I wanted to thank the three of you for speaking, I guess, to kind of the heart of the matter, like what's really, what inspires you about it, and what issues are kind of deeper into what we're seeing as a tool that has been applied for decades, but also is invisible behind the scenes. And I think Professor Neil Leach and some of his, I guess, I would say dialogues on Sundays, talking about the philosophy theory with some of these individuals that have changed the field, many fields, how do we insert ourselves? I wanted to call a call back to Tim and maybe Risa to maybe speak about their work. So Tim, can you kind of address some issues or burning questions?
Yeah.
Also,
I think
one thing Tim is giving, I saw that Tim is giving a workshop on that. So you can also say a little bit about what you're going to do in your workshop. So.
Yes, thanks, Angelica. Yeah, I'm doing a workshop, I think about 2-3 weeks for parametric architecture, the platform. So if you guys are interested in using Midjourney AI as a tool for designing architecture and architectural spaces, then that's an opportunity to have a look. Yeah. So that aside, I think one of the very important things I think I want to address is the ongoing pessimism that I see starting to become a reaction. And there's a prevalent notion that whether it is an art form itself or not, and the fact that you're typing text and things just generate automatically, and a lot of people, I do see the pessimism of thinking it's too low effort and it doesn't qualify as art. So I think we have to think about it like when, for example, when camera was invented, it's so easy to just click and snap. But in the end, it's photography an art form. And at this point, we can clearly see that society has adapted and it's a tool. This tool is an art form, and it created its separate line of artwork and profession and different usage. So in parallel, I think, the artificial intelligence will become its own art form and its own utilitarian purpose for architecture and for fashion design and for a lot more other things in the coming days. So I'm not worried in the fact that it's going to just replace the artist in that sense. That fear that we should be replaced by AI, I think it's replacing some aspects of what we're doing. It's actually breaking down the technical barriers and democratizing we as artists all around the world. You don't have to take a course on heavy duty rendering machines and to generate high quality images. Now people around the world have a concept, they can type it in and start guiding towards what you want to achieve. So in that sense, I think it opens up a lot more opportunities for a lot more people in this world. We are just shifting our focus from learning the technicalities of generating high-res images to more on the conceptual side, which is what we as, I think, architects and designers really value, is the side that we are trying to manipulate and try to create and to affect the world. And the technical aspects are just things that we are using to aid us in producing these art forms. So I think it's helpful, the AI, every way it is, you know, the way it's just completely changing what we're doing, and the Moore's law taking off like crazy. And that's why I think working at Zaha Hadid Architects, we absolutely are interested in these new technologies, and we are taking every very much care in trying to do our research and making sure that we know what is coming, because I think AI is coming and it's going to stay, and it's just absolutely going to change almost every single field of design. Yeah.
I think sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, just I just want to add something to that. I mean, there's always a kind of a human resistance to whatever is new. I mean, obviously photography caused, people were very disturbed by it, but actually things like the Eiffel Tower, I don't know if you know, but the Eiffel Tower, when it was first built, caused such outrage that famously there was a guy called Guy de Maupassant who used to take his lunch on the second story of the Eiffel Tower on the basis it was the only place in Paris from which you couldn't see the Eiffel Tower. And now, of course, we love it. But I think maybe the better model is just back in the late 80s, early 90s, the incursion of computation into architecture. I studied at Cambridge, right? And at Cambridge, we were banned from using computation. And what that did was simply produce a generation of graduates who were unemployable, literally unemployable. You have to find out about these things, and frankly, it's going to make you more employable. So there are many aspects of it, but it keeps recurring, this kind of very conservative resistance to these technologies.
I just want to say that I see it more like a conversation with the machine. It's like you're trying to see how it responds to us and how it can kind of understand the black box thing. And maybe it's not that black of a box, because you start trying to guide to certain objectives that we have. And I think we're getting very successful in this conversation as each day passes by, and they have better models. But it's like we are kind of designing with the machine. That's what I feel, and then that's the most exciting part for me when I work with I mostly work with Dalle and sometimes mix both of them. It gives me such a sense of pleasure and happiness of dealing with it. I feel like it's like addictive. I cannot stop. It's like all of a sudden it's just like hours have passed by, and then you have all these beautiful images that you can select and start looking really closely at each one of them and see what they're bringing to you, or to your imagination, like to input of your creativity. Sara, you would like to say something? Sorry, Sara's no?
Sorry, before Sara goes, I think Pedro had his hand up. Sara, would you mind going next after that?
Sure.
Okay, Pedro.
Yeah, I just want to point a very short idea regarding new opportunities in this new reality. Something that I found really interesting and fascinated at the same time in the forums is that there is a small portion of people that right now is developing prompt generating tools. So they're like generating a small piece of software that lets regular users guides you to start arranging text correctly. And that's something that I found really, really interesting in this era of the AI, that there are now tools that helps you to create text in the best way possible to create the pictures that you already want to create,
Sara, would you mind going next?
Yeah, actually, in my opinion, as I'm also entering AI world, like recently, I didn't know anything before about AI. But now this is really minding that, there's a lot of types of people, and also there's a lot of types of architects. Some architects are visual architects, some architects are drawing architects, schematic architects. So not all architects are capable to create such images, and they feel like, do I have to learn all the long designing and rendering process? It will take hours and hours of testing materials, testing spaces, testing all of this. So AI is really good at that. It's starting to show a very nice results in terms also of designing and taking the dimensions of the space. I mean, I'm thinking of the exhibition presentation that I presented today as how humans can take pictures from the machine and actually present it on real life and make ephemeral architecture out of it, which is really easy and super fast to create. So that's really interesting. And this is the scope of my interest right now in researching more in this.
Maybe we can, sorry.
No, sorry, Angelica. Basically, I wanted to kind of make sure that we hear from everyone before we continue further. I've been trying to get Risa on for a while, but Risa, is your microphone working?
Yes, now, yeah.
Okay.
But I couldn't hear the beginning of the discussion, sorry.
Well, no worries. I think what we're trying to get at is why is this important to you as a process, and where are we in the disciplines of architecture, media arts, science, design. I was very interested in your process of going from image to form. Can you maybe talk about that in relation to what you've seen in other presentations?
Yeah, first of all, it was very interesting to see like a different kind of approach for this topic. And I am not so like specific for this AI technology before this Midjourney, but I was interested in how to play with or how to explore with Midjourney. And my thought was how we can create out of space or like a 3D. And because the Midjourney is right now, it's more like a 2D based image. And since I'm doing architect, so I'm thinking more like a 3D space or how we experience with this kind of space. And so today I introduced kind of work in progress basic experiments. So it's not like it's only about form, but it could be also integrated with materiality or structure. And yeah, I would like to experiment further.
I guess we can call Christo because he's doing very much into materials and wood, and he's like specifically dealing with it and showing to clients, and maybe he can talk about to us a little bit how is this working for him as an art profession.
I mean, it's lovely. It's extraordinary. There's definitely a bit of hand holding where you have to explain where this comes from, and I think there is still quite a big gap between what we're doing here and what's happening and being perceived and understood in all around the world. So there is a lot of explaining where does this information come from, where do these images come from, how do they fit into a process, which is a good conversation to have with the clients as well. But I think it's kind of like what Tim was talking about and what Luísa were talking about how you can really truncate that process and communicate more efficiently. And I think a lot of architecture is and even art and design is about that. It's about like communicating effectively, trying to express and show as directly as you possibly can what's going on in the designer's mind, so that the client can do the same and they can kind of go forwards and backwards, and this is just the perfect assistant to have to help with that whole dialogue and that whole communication.
I guess Nasser also could say a little bit about his process, because he's doing vernacular architecture, right? And then materials and trying to act a bias in your favor by specifically using it. Can you say something, please?
Yeah, sure. So I think I kind of add a comment here. I think something that's gonna be really positive is it will help us to kind of break away from the Rhino bubble. So like the Rhino is like you kind of see it, especially in like education, in architectural education, you see kind of many students can use 3D modeling software, especially Rhino, and it's very quickly kind of notice how invested we get in those softwares. And I really think AI would help us kind of break away from that, where I remember a professor at AUS, he always kind of say, kind of highlight the importance of using words and the design process. And I think we're kind of seeing the manifestation of that in AI, right? So where your kind of true intentions, your how you use words, certain words, would kind of reflect directly in the design and the outcome, rather than relying on this really long and tedious process of going back and forth using Rhino, right, or like 3D Max. So yeah, I think that's one way it could have a positive impact.
Thank you. Essa, can you say a little bit about your work as with a landscape designer? How do you think of possibly ways of integrating it? It's like a very interesting thing that you chose.
I think I would add to my ending question about eliminating human involvement in design, which, as Tim mentioned, it's a really apparent fear amongst many people that I've heard from. These tools definitely change the way that we can share ideas, but as humans, we're not simply not able to develop without physical communications, material and fabrication to create spaces and landscapes and cultures. So I think there's nothing to be feared about, but rather like we will lend these tools to become very useful, essential kind of design processes for some of us, and bring new conversations faster, more rapidly. And for me, in the process, I find being able to collage and merge together many key aspects that we're wishing to improve about our environment provides new solution, but we're still able to work collaboratively, digitally or physically together to realize these beautiful visions from these AI tools.
Thank you. I guess this brings us to a question on the YouTube, Gustavo, that from Maritzek. Do you think AI generator tools are going to replace the concept design stage for architects? I don't think they're going to replace it. I think they're going to be integrated into the design concept stage and even further after they get more developed, right?
Yeah, I think before we move on with that question too, I think I asked Ash if he wanted to say something more about what he presented and if there's any burning questions he had for the group.
And also his background. I don't know if you're an architect or I guess you're a data scientist, right? How do you get into this architecture imagery generating?
Oh, that is a long story, but I do have a background in some civil engineering and design. I'm a bit of a polymath, so I'm kind of all over the place. Just another way of saying all over the place. You know, I'm really kind of, I operate at the very bleeding edge of combining technologies that add to their impact by combining them. So, you know, I really started getting back to this world when additive manufacturing and 3D printing of construction methods started kind of coming out a few years ago. And, you know, seeing some mainstream practices there. I see, you know, I kind of just want to build things. I always want to skip ahead and make sure and just apply a lot of technology, right? And the way that was really interesting to me was, you know, how can we actually implement any of these technologies in the real world, right? Because I mean, my frustration is usually seeing all these technologies, but not being able to implement them in real life projects. So as I see more of these come together, it just kind of it allows me to see a future where it's highly accelerating. And my view is what we're going to see an increase in acceleration of these kind of tools, augmenting our abilities to create, right? And if we can be more expansive in terms of the tools that we create, the things that we create as well, the complexities that we're going to be able to create in the future because of these tools. This is kind of what really excites me about this world. I was working on a smart city IoT project, and essentially, obviously it's also an AI, a very interesting AI for me to play around with, and that's one of the reasons. One of my projects is to do smart cities and vertical forests, and that's kind of how I arrived at using these image generators in this way. But I really do like the idea of augmenting it, and to somebody's I think it was I'm sorry if I messed this up. I think it was Essa maybe or Kate, but they were mentioning how do we actually manufacture these? How do we go from a very pretty image of great conceptual design to using AI tools for the fabrication methods that are going to be required, right? So I love seeing this combined with 3D printing, combined with smart technologies, nanomaterials. I really love that kind of space. That's a little bit of my background, Angelica, and I'm sorry if it was didn't expand on that earlier, and also sorry for my terrible video.
No, thank you.
No, don't worry about it. I think what we loved seeing here are faces too. So next time for sure. I think Sara wanted to start off this next section. So I think this next section we want to really get to the core of not only your process, but why are we here today to speak to each other? So Sara.
Yeah, I have a question for Risa regarding her material research. I mean, how does AI generated pictures help you in your material fabrication? Like you test your material first and then you get the idea and then you generate the AI pictures, or it's the opposite process? How does it benefit your research?
So the AI visualizations was a culmination of two projects from the AADRL coming together. But yes, the creative part, the idea to blend them together to create hybrids was ours. It was us first, trying out the material first, and then we took it into the AI. But then what I found out is that through the process of the AI, I managed to discover that I could create not only hybrids between materials, but hybrids between fabrications and hybrids between materials and fabrications. So it kind of exploded the exploration. And now I have all these pictures of different generated materials in AI, and I'm trying to make them a reality. And that's the next challenge for me and for us. So that's where it's like a give and take. It's like a conversation, but it started with us exploring materials on our studios, and then combining the two, and then taking it to this new tool, and then the tool gave us back new ideas and new materials, and potentially I think it would be nice to replicate the outputs, but you might find out something new from doing it in the machine. Maybe it's not exactly the same as the AI visualizes it, but the fact that you're forced to create a prompt and combine ideas, put different contexts together and different materials and different methods, it helps you think even more creatively, I think, or it helps you, and that's only part of the uses for AI in my perspective. The other part is the communication aspect. I think it was so nice to visualize things for the scientists they were really impressed by the images. And at the same time, I didn't have to dedicate so much time. I could spend more time making the electrodes for them, actually fabricating the prototypes, which is why I think AI would lift a lot of weight of communication between disciplines and experts. So yeah, but yeah, so we started, and then we brought the experiments into the prompt selection. Yeah.
I think one of the maybe difficult parts of it is learn how to communicate in words what we're doing. Like when you're trained as an architect, it's usually mostly visual. And then unless you go to well, here in Brazil we do masters with a thesis, written thesis or PhD, that you have to really write about things and become a writer, and that's the nice thing too, the like approaches to this descriptions and how to communicate with people with words, not only with images, and this back and forth word image thing. Yeah. Sometimes you get like, wow, that wasn't what I was imagining. Am I communicating well? So that's a very nice part of it.
Yeah, before we move on to Christo, I just wanted to say that I wanted to also put prompts to Neil's Instagram with Midjourney, because I think at one point we were speculating, you know, why is his Instagram so cool and these other designers that have been designing for 20-something years, why are they stuck? I think, you know, language is also a code. You communicate, and these instructions tell people, organizations, nations, and they create these kind of socially created structures. And I think as architects, we're responsible to do the whole thing, even if it's impossible. And artists as well, we reimagine the world. So Christo, do you have any burning questions here? I saw your hand up.
Not so much a burning question, more just I really find, again, Luísa, what you're talking about really interesting, and how this also is very similar to what's happening at the architectural scale as well, where you have to have that visual representation to help, especially with these new fabrication techniques. So, you know, what is it going to look like if we're printing buildings out of earth? Or, you know, what is it going to look like if we're, you know, making clothes out of these exotic biological materials? And more than just being able to say it, but being able to show it as well, and show it in detail and like really delicately and nuanced. I think that really does make take a big step forward to bridge that gap of communication, and really start laying all those breadcrumbs to what that future vision starts being. So I just think it's amazing.
Yes.
Can I, Gustavo, just respond actually to your comment? I mean, I was struck by how some of the well-known designers are a bit stuck. You know, it's curious that it's people like myself who, I mean, I've been teaching design all my career, but I don't have an office. You know, somehow it's given me a whole kind of potential. I mean, I think, you know, I always think the model of the GAN, the generator and the discriminator. I've been a discriminator, critic, you know, but you're learning from that kind of world of design all your time. And this allows people like myself or Lev Mamovich to kind of suddenly get out there. And because we got no kind of, you know, no set agenda, I mean, we were open to more things. But I think if, you know, designers who are used to this top-down thing possibly can't really relax enough to go with the flow of this thing. So, but it is an interesting kind of question about how it is some people are a bit sort of stuck and other people are kind of leaping forward. So I don't know, I'm just throwing out an idea there.
Thank you, Neil. I thank you, Neil, for that. I think it's Pedro. I'm not sure if he brought it up in his presentation, but you know, what are we here to do today? And what is our responsibilities as makers, designers, thinkers? I think Neil sets a high bar when it comes to the writing and to the theory and to the criticality. You know, if we're just objects in an office or at a job, we're replaceable. But it's our energy and our intellect and our questions that keep us here. So Pedro, you had some really insightful things when you talked about, you know, what you were thinking about. Do you have any more ideas of how we can continue changing and evolving this technology to work for people and to solving problems?
Yeah, sure. What I found in game design, even though I am not a professional game designer, I found in game design a lot of similarities between with architectural design, in terms that what I found something beautiful in game design is that it's easy to explore and study human behavior immediately when designing a game. So and that's something that I found different from architecture, that when we need to have a building built to start seeing how people react to the build, to the object, to the building. It's something that doesn't happen in game design, because you can design something quickly, people can experience it quickly, and you can make changes quickly. And that's something that I found important when tools like Midjourney or Dalle appear, is that it helps you to give you more control, or it gives you the possibility for you to create more inputs, to study more things in less time. I am not saying that that's a bad thing, but we have the possibility to produce more things to study people. And if I might say in this way, we can make people's life better in a more romantic way. Even games have the possibility to change your life, you know. So that's why I find in game design a good opportunity to make the world more democratic, because tools such as Midjourney gives not only designers but users the possibility to experience or to create their own experience. That's something that I find positive, at least.
I think one thing that came up on the session, the first session that you organized about the first Midjourney and Dalle that I participated, was that this was going to be for most people like a fad, that they were just gonna get tired of it and then not work with it, and only the fierce one would remain dealing with it and then make the things going further. So I think I can see like a difference between just making up beautiful images that most people like would start doing it just for the sake of making images. And now all of you here are really trying to engage it in a process, trying to really understand it and take it to the next level, not passing a little bit of prejudice, maybe, oh, this is just an image making tool, and it's not. And I'm really happy that you came today and start showing this can be so much more, and starting to explore it and trying to use it and understand it and taking it seriously as I think it should. So some words came up to my mind.
Yeah, well, thank you, Angelica. I think we're kind of at the stage to kind of winding it down, but before we do that, I think I had some wisdom to share. I think that in my years of doing research and in architecture and in art, recently I was told that there's a responsibility. There's these many levels of responsibility, but two. There's one with the big C, which is a big creativity and your responsibility to challenge the world, to ask the tough questions, to, canonical ideas and power. Is it working for you and for the people around you? And then there's little c, which is you can be in your studio or in your office or in your home, make beautiful things, and it'll never affect anyone. I think before we close, I wanted to hear from each one of you quickly where you are in the spectrum, and do you even care if the world is dissolving into climate change and displacement and inequality? I mean, I'm not putting you on the spot. It's just mostly Neil has made a platform for us to really discuss why we're here, sacrificing years and decades of our lives. And I think it's important to really just say where you are and why it's important. So, and when that's over, Neil, I think we want to give you the last word to close us out. So anyone, I think Kate, you seem like you're brave here. So how do you want to start this section out?
Sure. Yeah. I definitely care about our planet. I care about our world. And I think that's kind of why my path as kind of a designer and an artist has taken the one it is. I wasn't expecting 2 years ago that I would end up in a molecular biology lab, working with synthetic biology and using my design skills to modify living organisms. But here we are, and the outputs of that are, you know, biodegradable electronics, biodegradable materials that couldn't be made kind of without doing these processes. And much of that, again, is using AI models and pathways. So using AI kind of beyond like Midjourney exercises and into how can we actually predict what materials will do, what organisms will do. And so I think that, you know, that fact that we care as designers is what takes us on these wild, crazy paths. And, you know, is one of the reasons why I'm working on growing electronics and growing all this crazy stuff that sounds like it should be real, or that sounds like it shouldn't be real. So I think it definitely matters kind of how us as designers fit into the larger context and how we can help our work, have our work help our planet and help the people around us.
Wow, that's very powerful. You know, Sara, Sarah's been a really great colleague. Sara, what are your thoughts?
Thank you so much. Actually, it's really challenging to analyze all of these changes right now because it's happening very fast, and we're not really getting an accurate understanding where is this going for architect. But in my opinion, that we keep on exploring each in his research aspect, because there's a huge possibilities that we can answer the open questions that I mentioned in my presentation. Is how can AI be the replacement of CAD, computer-aided design? How can we replace those long processing softwares in a more quick and a more effective process of designing? In my scope of research, for example, ephemeral architecture and exhibitions, people will actually need a quick design for these places, and also a quick fabrication. So we have kind of lagging in the quick design process, because we need to draw, we need to render, we need to test, we need to take all this time. And in the fabrication process, we will have to be very quick. But at this technology, we can balance between two and make an open dialogues actually, and learn from machine also, and really use it as a very great tool for architecture in the upcoming times. And yeah, that's from my side, I think, right now.
Well, thank you very much. Who else wants to speak?
Yeah, sure. So I think from my side, I think a lot of architecture and buildings in this region, in the MENA region, UAE especially, they don't work, right? They are not built with this region in mind, the climate, the materials you're supposed to use. And as a matter of fact, I think if you can just look at the news and kind of filter down the results to the UAE, you would probably see a building or two going up in flames every week or every month in Dubai or in Abu Dhabi. And that's sorry. Yeah, and that's because yeah, and that's because a lot of those buildings, they are built using materials that are really ineffective in this region. So one of the reasons why I'm kind of been focusing on more vernacular usage of AI, usage that kind of explores materials, methods that are more suitable to this region, is really because of how I kind of perceive the place I live at, right? And it's not just materials; it's just the way things are built, the way the city is built, right? They're very car-oriented. They're against pedestrians, and so yeah, I think that's one way I could kind of start tying usage of AI, and yeah.
Thank you, Nasser, for your thoughts. Christo, I think you had your hand up. Do you want to say something to wind us out?
Yeah, I mean, it's very much just to build on what Nasser and Sara were saying, and it has to do, I think, a lot with complexity and what might happen over the next few decades, and really building up as much capacity to deal with and manage and understand and deploy work in very complex and very delicate and nuanced situations in ways that we probably have no idea what they might be. So as many tools as we possibly can kind of get a hold of, and kind of understanding what the the weight of this next few decades is going to be for us as professionals, we need all the help that we can get. So I think really wrangling these tools and getting as comfortable and proficient with them as possible is definitely the way to do it.
Yeah, I'll love to add to that too, is that, you know, the more creators we can get on board, the more in between communications that we can leapfrog, the more that we can create, and the more we can, more problems we can solve in this world, right? And, you know, if we have that, if we allow our big C to drive kind of the functionality aspect and impact aspect of it, then we can align that with our little c. And, you know, the more people we have on that trajectory, the more we progress as a species, right?
Why, thank you, Ash. Is there anyone else that has not spoken? If you want to take the stage, the floor. Anyone?
I actually just wanted to say a quick thing, just about sort of the future and how it's related to AI. And before sort of the emergence of these platforms, we were all sort of grappling with these questions, and we all kind of realized we had to make a lot of sort of maybe going forward, a lot of hard decisions, just so that we can preserve the autonomy of design and fabrication, and somehow how we can incorporate intelligence and ecology at the same time. But now that with the emergence of AI, I feel like, you know, sort of moving beyond the image, as architects and designers can start acting as, you know, sort of interpreters, right? So somehow a term related to language, right? How can we translate as people who understand three-dimensionality and materiality, and also are aware of these questions and sort of the economic pressures and the political pressures and the environmental pressures? And, you know, sort of this part of our responsibility, besides understanding the tool, is once we move beyond the image, we will be at some point acting, you know, in front of the world as the interpreters of these three-dimensionality and of these sort of oversaturation of amazing images produced by AI. So I think that's why I'm kind of optimistic, in the sense that AI is not going to sort of make design and architecture, or designers and architects, you know, somehow obsolete. That's not the case, because there's definitely a role to start translating what we understand into the world by reading the image itself. So.
Well, thank you, Fadhil. I think, Risa, I'm still intrigued by what you presented today. Can you also share your thoughts?
Yeah, and I'm actually thinking like this AI technology is a little bit scary, because it's pretty new. I mean, it's already a couple of years, but after 5 years or 10 years, it's going to be maybe something normal or standard. And before, our technology is more like, for the architecture, for example, it was like from the sketch, and it is getting 2D CAD and then 3D CAD and like an Illustrator and so on. Every technology, before it was new, and then now this Midjourney is very new. After 5 years, I'm not sure how it is like positioning this technology and what is coming as a next step. And I am not sure how you're thinking, all you guys.
Risa, can I respond to that? Maybe I can respond by quoting someone who used to work for Wolf Pricks. Wolf always has this expression, in 2 days, tomorrow will be yesterday. I often say today will be yesterday. You know, and I think the point is actually is that we're gonna, if you're going to predict the future, and it's actually very difficult to predict the future. Niels Bohr says prediction is difficult, but especially about the future. But if there is something certain we know, is it probably, we're speculating about what we're going to do with Midjourney right now, but actually there's going to be a new tool around tomorrow that's going to be then the thing we're going to be speculating about. So one thing we can predict for sure is there are going to be new tools there. And new tools, both in terms of how these connect to Midjourney and so on. I mean, one of the comments my students were making 2 months ago is that actually, if you can connect words to something out there, it could be not just images, but also movies or music or even fabrication tools or God knows what. I mean, and I think this is going to happen. It already has. We've seen this with the development of AI and movies and things. You can use prompt engineering now for movies. But I think the other thing to say is that there are very definitely tools that are being developed right now you know, that are in production, they're going to be on stream in 3 years' time, you know, and that's for sure. And that's going to take us into a different sort of world. I'm always struck by how people sort of wake up to AI when they see Midjourney and these things, but actually there's been a whole process going that we haven't been aware of, but it's going to be delivering. And in 3 to 5 years' time, we're going to be absolutely in a different sort of situation. That's why I think we need to prepare and be ready for it. For sure, the only thing that we know is that there's going to be more coming, and it's going to be coming even faster. But I just want to say that this has been a fantastic glimpse. You know, it's fantastic. It's great to have, you know, someone from Johannesburg and, you know, from Peru and everyone together. And this, in a way, is actually realizing in some ways what we were planning for this kind of platform, that you can bring everyone together, share information, and have this immediate feedback that you couldn't do in the past. So I would simply say that tomorrow we're going to have this session with the doctoral consortium, where we're going to be looking at how the AI feeds into the design studio, and the following Sunday we're going to be looking at how it's going to affect the design practice itself in the office, because we have Theodore Skalanas, who was responsible for developing infrared and a number of other sort of softwares for environmental design. We have Wan Yu He, who is quietly but very steadily building up probably the most impressive AI software in the world in Shenzhen, in China. We have Patrick Schumacher joining us, talking about how in the Zaha office they're beginning to embrace these things, and also Daniel Bolojan, who has been part of the kind of Corp Umlau initiative and so on. And I look back on if you look back on certain things in history, you know, I think the point is that some of the kind of the ideas that people were speculating about, you know, I can remember, for example, the AADRL when I was teaching at the AA, we got back in 2000 or something like that, 2002. And these guys were really kind of speculating about sort of, you know, there was one thing I published in Design for Digital World, which is kind of like, Patrick was saying, well, all these our furniture is going to program, and the chairs and the tables are going to come together for a meeting over here, you know. Well, that's a reality now in hotels. You can order your Coca-Cola or something, and there's some robot that's going to be taking it up there. So, you know, I think it's important to actually position ourselves where we can really take advantage of these things, and to really speculate and to be open-minded about it. And it's not easy, but if we want to succeed, we've got to really embrace that possibility and see what happens. But it's an exciting time. I think this is the most exciting time in my entire career as an architect. You know, it reminds me in many ways. I mean, Wolf Pricks always makes the kind of decon to AI connection. I think that's very true. But back in the when I just came out of college, you know, in the 90s, we had faced with postmodernism. It was the most dreary stuff, and suddenly decon came along, and then Derrida and Deleuze and all these debates happened, and the computational thing happened and things, and that was amazing. But now I think there's a second moment really of energized, that they've been energized, and I'm very excited about it. But you know, it is both exciting and also terrifying. But I think if we're going to survive, we've got to be able to kind of predict things and put ourselves out there and be ready for it, because it is going to change things, and things are in process, as it were. They're in the pipeline. They're about to be delivered. So we need to be aware of that. So anyway, I want to thank you all for this incredible insight. You know, as I mentioned, we're interested. We're all about the future, the digital future, and it's good to know that the digital future is in good hands, because you guys are the guys who are going to be the people in the future who are going to take us further forward. So can I also just simply thank Angelica and Gustavo and the whole team that's been behind all this, because this is also an iceberg, right? You only see something, but it's a lot of work that goes behind the scene. But it's great to know when you see a session like this that, you know, how productive it is and how useful it is in terms of sharing information. So thank you for sharing your stories, and please come and join us tomorrow and every single Sunday and every other events, because it's great to have so many people involved. So thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you very much to everyone. I think that it was a very inspirational time today. I felt it's very provocative, and I'm very let's say I feel privileged to be in your presence, and I really enjoy Professor Leach's wisdom when it comes to understanding where we are. And Angelica, I want to especially thank her for her initiative and energy to putting this together, conceiving it, reaching out, and she's a very special colleague. And Angelica, did you want to say something before we go?
Yeah. I'd like to thank you all. Thank you, Neil, for being here. Thank you, Gustavo, for helping me with this, to put up this. I'm really, really happy with all of you here. And I may be reaching some of you later to talk more about your own processes, because I'm very interested in all of them. So thank you very much for attending and participating. Thank you all. It was great session. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Just make sure you say bye. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Have a
Thank
good
you.
one.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
We're here for you.
Bye-bye.